This is Equip and Engage, a podcast by Subsplash, exploring how ministry, technology, and innovation come together to equip churches around the world to engage their communities.
Hey everyone, welcome to Equip and Engage. I'm Chris, part of the team here at Subsplash. Really excited to be back with another conversation in our See the Good series, in which we are interviewing pastors and leaders and musicians and business executives, many others, just to hear their perspectives on the current global situation and how they're seeing the good in their surroundings right now. So today, I'm really excited just to be joined by Zach Bolen of Citizens, a Seattle band. Zach, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Excited.
Totally. It's really good to have you. And I know that you and the band are up to some really cool things right now. And
yeah,
I'm sure would have some really cool perspective on just what it's like to release music in the midst of this situation. And can't wait to get into it. It's going to be great.
Let's do it. I love it.
Even before we get started with a few questions, I'd love just to hear a little bit about you, about the band, about the community you're a part of, family. Just who is Zach Bolen? Bring us in.
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up on the East Coast and in Maryland, and then I went to college in Georgia. And when I was down there, I met a guy who actually they're sort of the reason that my wife and I made it out to Seattle.
Sweet.
They were a part of, they were a part of a church here in Seattle, and we had been friends with them for years. In fact, even before they had moved to Seattle from Georgia, we had said, like, they had said, if you guys go to Seattle, we'll go. And they went, and we came like 4 years later. So
nice. Close enough.
we were a little delayed, but so it's kind of crazy. So we came out here to be a part of a church, and I was a worship director, and that was a really sweet thing, because that's where the band formed. I met every single band member at that church, and so we started. Really, we mostly just started arranging music, hymns.
Yep. Right.
And then shortly after, like, some of that, we began to get in more to like writing and all that too. So that's kind of how Citizens began to sort of take shape, and a lot of really sweet things there. So, I mean, and all along, I've always been doing music ever since I was like a really young kid. So, I mean, all of this has always been in line with, I guess you could say, like, life trajectory.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't see myself working in the church, and even the past couple of years I haven't been, because the church we're a part of, unfortunately, went through some tough times. It's not a church anymore.
Sure.
And that kind of led to like a really clear, I think, directive for me personally, of just feeling a lot of fulfillment in writing songs for the church and writing songs about my faith, but not necessarily having to do that in a vocational ministry capacity. But being able to serve the church, but also being able to have like another job, if you will. And that's been really cool. I've really enjoyed that. And I have 4 kids. My wife, she works at our church. She's a women's director, and she's awesome. Great teacher, and just amazing person. And so, we've had it's kind of been interesting to see us sort of switch roles a little bit in that way, because I worked at the church for so many years, and she supported me in that, and now it's kind of a reverse thing, and we support each other in different ways, but that's just been a cool thing for our family. So Citizens is still making music and still doing all that, and it's been a cool couple of years. 10 years almost, actually.
10 years of Citizens. That's awesome. I didn't realize and hadn't put a date on it, but that's sweet. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear just a little bit about your perspective on what we're all going through right now, and particularly, like, where are you sort of seeing the good? You can think of it as, silver lining, or really just seeing like God's favor and his grace in the midst of some really crazy circumstances.
Right. I think probably the one that I think about the most, there's a couple things that come to mind, really. The one that is probably the most that I think about most often is just the fact that I think that the way that, at least for our family, we operated our lives in general were so busy with 4 kids that once all these things sort of got pulled out from under us, that was a little scary at first, because, we didn't know what to expect. But now that we're in it, we're realizing how this pace of life is probably a bit more natural.
Yeah, sure. I can see that.
And or a way of life that we're a rhythm that we should probably be all of us pursuing a bit more.
Yeah.
We get wrapped up in work and all the different things that we do, and those things are good. Hopefully we're all able to do work that we enjoy. And I know that's not the case for everybody. I've been fortunate enough to do that with Citizens and with songwriting, but at the same time, I've really appreciated that people's values, I think, are beginning to, or at least they're beginning to reconsider, what are my values as like when we come out of this. So I think that in itself is a pretty cool thing, because that doesn't just involve like the time that people spend. Now it ventures into like, other values of like faith for people that aren't Christians but might want to start thinking about, oh man, like maybe they have that in their past, or maybe they don't. I don't know, but I do think we've seen that in our family and in our just our neighborhood. But then also I think just in sharing new music, it's like, I think hitting people in a really significant way that it hasn't in the past.
I can see that. Well, I know that you guys are doing some really interesting things with music right now, and would kind of love just to hear about the project that you're in the middle of right now, and particularly like how you as a band really tried something different, I think, and really like adapted. Maybe it was to serve, the current situation, or maybe it was the plan all along. I'd just love to hear about what you guys are doing, and what fruit you're seeing from that.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple years back, we started thinking about a church song record. We've kind of been all over the place over the years. We've made records that were had a combination of church songs and other songs. And to be honest, that's been the cool thing about our band, is I feel like because the content has stayed consistent, musically we've kind of gone in a lot of different directions, and the purpose of our music has changed at different points. Because sometimes it has been, we're going to make a record that isn't necessarily a church-based record, but it has this purpose instead. But this record is like, we wanted to write songs for the church to sing. And so we had the idea of recording those songs on an iPhone first. And we've been talking about that for a long time. And then we did it back in January, and the church building that we rent, our church rents. And so it was really wild to be in an empty, at the time, we didn't think anything of it.
Yeah,
but
of course.
When we started releasing the videos, it dawned on me like, oh my gosh, like how crazy is this for us to have, like, all the COVID stuff is just like, it's reaching its peak now. We can't gather anymore as a church, and we're releasing these videos of us playing these songs in our church building that's empty.
Yes. Yeah.
And
which looks like every Sunday morning for most churches now.
Exactly, man. Yeah. Now that image is not, people have seen that plenty of times now, right?
Yeah.
But initially it was like, whoa, this is really cool. So, that's kind of where that project came from. And the reason we wanted to record the songs in that way is because we recognize that, and I think in a lot of modern church music, there's a lot of emphasis put on style and the sound. Like, for instance, where I even grew up, most people, if they change churches, it's because they're tired of the music and they're looking for another church to find better music, right?
Yeah.
And that is so true almost everywhere.
Yeah.
Because people get tired of different things, like, I want something new. And I think we've just become so obsessed with like the way something makes us feel, which is a good thing. I mean, we like to feel good.
Yeah, we feel for a reason too. So there's something in that.
Feelings that God gave us, those are good. Yeah. But I think that our feelings don't always, and I would say rarely, lead us to what is true. And so at least in my story, it's always been kind of, we'll just use singing, for example. I'm singing what I know, or singing what is true, trusting it to be true. And that in the process goes from just like being up here in my head to becoming something like, oh, I actually feel this truth now. It's not just something I'm saying or I'm thinking about. It's actually something I believe. And that's kind of where this project came from, is like, let's give these songs to everybody in a really basic format that they can then receive them in their own way, and they can arrange them in their way, and they can share them with their church in whatever way they want. Because if we do the Citizen style, then that might cause people to hear that song and say, oh, that's not for us, or they'll only do it in that way, and that isn't necessarily the right thing for their church.
Yeah.
So I
love that.
I just think people are so imaginative and so creative when it comes to the musical styles, we have so much diversity within the world, but there's pretty much only like 4 or 5 primary sounds in modern worship music that sort of occupy the spaces of most churches.
Yeah.
But
I believe that.
You know what I'm saying? But that isn't necessarily representative of the kind of music that people like.
Yeah.
It's just a popular style.
Yeah. Just what happened, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this was hopefully a way to like inspire people to create a little bit more and to think about the lyrics, think about how they are true for them, and then to write and arrange out of that.
Man, that's so cool. Well, one would love just to hear like what the results have been. Like what have you been seeing people do with all of that, for one? And then also, what do you think is the significance of doing this sort of project, this experiment, even in this current season, as opposed to if you had done this a year ago or a year from now?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, we've had lots of people send us arrangements of these songs. I mean, they've done everything from like remixes to just them playing guitar and singing the song. And you know what's been really cool is there's a lot of people who I think have had a lot of courage, and they've shared their videos with us. And you can tell, like, all right, they probably are just dusting off that guitar from 10 years ago.
Sure.
But that's the cool thing about this time, is that it's provided those values of like, I like music. I've been doing all this other stuff for so long. Not trying to become a professional musician or anything, but man, I'd love to pick up my guitar, and that inspired people to do that. So, I mean, we had tons of arrangements that came from that. That was really cool. And what's been really encouraging is to see churches already using those arrangements for their churches. Right? Yeah,
that's awesome.
So now it's like their song, which is cool. And then I think just the other, like the benefits of it all are just knowing that there is, I think in the church, it's really important that we're like training and teaching the people that are leading the singing that, hey, you're a prophetic voice in the lives of the people within your church. And so as you're singing these lyrics, you're singing truth into their hearts.
Yeah.
And they're going to carry that with them this week. And when they wake up tomorrow morning, they got some bad news. It's quite possible that song's going to be still like sitting in there ringing.
Yeah.
And so I think the benefit of it all is like giving like worship leaders the opportunity to sort of reflect and think about, well, think a bit more about, I think all of like COVID-19 has provided this, because we can't be together. So you get rid of all the production, and now it's just you playing a song at a piano or on a guitar. You don't have all the other stuff going on. You really start to think about, what am I saying?
Yeah.
Because you're not bothered by the distractions of everything else. I think that's such a cool thing. And I think that if more lead pastors especially can encourage their worship leaders to like, to not just be the people that sing or to be artists, but to actually see themselves as teachers, to read the Bible, to study their theology, to really formulate what it is they believe. Because that one, I think it makes for really meaningful times of worship, because then
agreed,
in connection to the sermon, there's like lyrics that are tied to what is being preached as well. And I think that these songs have kind of, at least what we've seen, is like the benefit is that I think it's caused people to have to stop and think a little bit more about, what am I singing?
Yeah.
What are we singing as a church? And do we believe that? Do we want to sing that? You know, and I like that.
Yeah, man, I think you're spot on with that. I'm curious to hear also what you think some of the like the long-term impact of all of this will be. Thinking both about just, global circumstances, but also just thinking about your situation or your identity as a band, even like, what does it look like now to be a part of the community you're part of the world, part of Citizens, the band, in light of this happening, and in light of this whole project and this album release being done the way that it was done?
That's a really cool question. I mean, I think for the band, I don't know, because it's like, oh
TBD,
man,
I know.
Yeah. Like whenever we could start playing shows again, that'll be really interesting. Or going to churches. We do that a lot, visiting churches, playing our songs or leading the singing there. That's it. It seems like that's pretty far out, just because, at least from most states that I've seen, the plans that they're releasing are sort of like a 50 person or less kind of phase for a
Yeah,
while.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that doesn't seem like they're going to be bringing bands out, or people are even going to be able to go to shows. I was just talking to someone last night who is friends with someone who manages some venues here in Seattle, and they said that they're looking at potentially not opening up booking again until January.
Man,
So
that's crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, so we're looking at that and saying, all right, well, we're not going to be playing. We're not going to be like live for a while with people. And so I think that I mean that is a little scary, just because that's a big way that we make a living.
I'm sure. Yeah, I think so.
But it also reminds me that we got a responsibility, I suppose, to keep writing and keep sharing. And
sure,
it's the internet, and you can get things out pretty quick to people. And so just trying to like do that, and maybe there'll be some cool things that come out of it. I mean, maybe in the future it creates a window into like getting to know the artists that you love and that you respect and have helped you like in lots of different ways. And I think that could be a cool feature to this whole process.
I think so too. You're absolutely right on that. Yeah, just thinking about how artists have had to sort of peel back some of the layers and do a little bit more intimate settings and performances and everything like that. So
yeah,
all that. Yep.
And I think too, like even for the church, I think about this a lot. Like maybe it would be kind of a cool thing. Maybe all we'll be able to do is like house churches for a while, and before we can all get together again. And I could see that being really, really powerful. I mean, I was in Australia recently, and it struck me actually just before all this. It was in February we were there, and it struck me like how the Christians that I know there, they all read their Bibles. And I thought, oh man, that's really cool. And I started thinking about like, I know this sounds insane, and I'm sure there's some statistics out there, but that's not the impression I get from a lot of Americans here.
Sure.
That like we're reading the Bible. I think that we have different views on what we believe the Bible is. And I think we are leaning a lot on our leaders to sort of to give us the language and the direction for like, oh, this is how we should value this. But I do think that there's something about if we kind of get rid of like the big gatherings and we're kind of coming together a little bit more. I think it puts us in a position where it's like, all right, now I actually have to like talk about my faith with Christians.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing that's kind of surprising. It's like, oh man, when you're I notice this at church sometimes, like people don't necessarily want to ask about how am I doing in my faith?
Sure.
Sort of general like life questions, work in this. And it's like, oh man, if we can't even ask questions about faith to our fellow brothers and sisters, we won't ask those questions to people who don't know Jesus.
Yep.
And so I think that if anything, this will be a way to like reinvigorate and reignite in us like desire, one, to be more vocal with one another about what God is doing in our lives, but also as we grow in that, becoming more present and vocal in our faith with people who don't know God.
Man, I love that. Let's absolutely hope for that. I'm with you there. So cool.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to make sure just that anybody listening, watching gets a chance to connect with you, connect with Citizens. What's that look like, just to follow you guys and be a part of what you're doing?
Go to Instagram. That's where we do most of our stuff.
Sweet.
Any of the social media stuff. And then you can find us on, we're available on all the streaming and music platforms. And you can listen to our music on there. We are slowly releasing. So we did the iPhone record and we're releasing studio versions of each of those songs. And so we're in the process of releasing those. We just released one last Friday, and we'll look to release one a month for the next little bit here, which would be cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So right now, anybody can go listen to the iPhone versions of the whole record. Right?
Absolutely.
And then just follow you guys for the next almost a year, it sounds like. And just see the studio versions from there. That's so cool. I know people love that.
And one other thing too is on weareworship.com/citizens, people can go there and they can download all the chord charts to those songs too.
Awesome.
So if they want to be able to play those songs for their church, they can go to weareworship.com/citizens and download all 8 of the chord charts.
Sweet. I love that. Thanks so much for that resource too.
Yeah.
Zach, appreciate your time, man. Thanks so much for being here and just stopping into the series, participating in the conversation with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So
I appreciate
good.
it.
Yeah. Thanks everyone just for watching, listening to Equip and Engage. We'll be back with more conversations just like this and would love for you to follow along. So subscribe, follow, whatever it takes just to make sure you're catching more conversations just like this and every episode. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Equip and Engage, where we're sharing insights learned from thousands of conversations with leaders and pastors around the world. To follow along with these conversations, subscribe today or visit our website.